Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It is June 4th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And failed to mention yesterday that we started a new month this week, so it seemed like we were just starting the new year. Now we're already getting into the summertime. Sometimes the summers can get kind of slow and the doldrums set in, but not today. Um, and this was a great move today. All uphill, really. We were a little sideways early after the opening here, so it was really hard to know that it was going to be this strong a day. But all the same, you still have to account for this first leg here. And then once we started higher, you'd want to assume that we may get a measured leg, which we reached right in here and started going sideways again, but we continued to climb higher and climbed all the way into the close. Closed on basically the high of the day, maybe not quite, but within a tick or two. So um, if you just stayed with this second leg, once we started, once you found this two-tiered channel, really you could have maybe found this early by pulling it off of these tops and dragging it over here and watching it bounce. But even I didn't really catch that this morning. So it was hard to know. It was hard to recognize that because we had this channel working up and then we were just going sideways. So again, you had to assume that since we traded up into this, that we're probably going to be successful going out the upside for a second leg. But I really didn't catch this channel until we came back right here. I actually uh, pulled this off the low side, and then of course I see how easy it fits up here. And usually I'll check that side, but this morning I just didn't catch it because of this two-tiered channel. I just thought it was the play off the two-tiered channel. And you would think this was strong simply because we came off this side and it took a long time to get back to the other side. But you see we quickly went sideways and then before we went higher again. And really what it was, if you after the fact, it's pretty easy to see that the market was really strong and we were coming off the high side of the bigger pattern. And where were we headed? We're headed to the other side. And that's what will happen a lot of times when the market's really strong, when it comes off the trend channel line and heads back to the trend line, is basically the market's so strong you're not going to get a sell off. You just go sideways to get back over there rather than correcting and coming back down to the trend line. You basically go sideways to it. So like here we corrected back to the trend line each time, but for the most part we stayed in that well, really for the rest of the day we stayed in the lower half. We couldn't get back up into this upper channel. So, I mean, really, you could almost look at this like a spike up and went to this channel, but there's a two-tiered channel here, and that's the darker two-tiered channel is the bigger pattern. And if you'd have just used this first leg and then worked off the low and that little failed break lower right there, that would have kept you into the highs till 2 o'clock, and you could have exited up here near the highs. So but I wouldn't be afraid to jump back in again up here before 2 o'clock if you got a good setup, which we really didn't get a lot of setups up there. It starts to get dangerous that late in the day unless you're entering off a key entry point. And we just didn't really get a lot of good setups off that key entry point later in the day. So, but there were plenty of trades here early on. And I'm going to back out a little more. We'll talk about the trades and wrap it up. But that's how I saw the day. I'm going to get this measured move out of the way there just so we um, and this is hard to trade across here. You know, when you're in a range, we traded up into this one, so your bias is going to be off the lows. But if you get a setup off the highs, I wouldn't be afraid to take it. Um, there's actually one short right here that is a lower high, but you're having to get short right into the middle, and it's never a good idea. Um, here's another possibility, but I think you'd want to wait on a lower high, being that we traded up into this range because your bias is going to be to the upside. So um, for that reason, you just don't see many shorts here. There is a second entry short right here, but again, you probably want to wait on a lower high, especially this early, because you're still really off this original two-tier channel. You're really still expecting prices to maybe try to shoot higher, and you don't really have a lot of information here. And that's another thing. You can see it's pretty consistent off the lows, but off the highs, it's not quite as consistent. I believe this is probably where most of your resistance was, but it's not as consistent, and your bias is to the upside. So you're going to have a hard time finding shorts in there, basically. You better wait on a good setup. There's a couple here that would have worked, but I just, I think you're better off to skip them. I don't see any that I like. So, if you're curious about any of those, yeah, you could have taken them. They're aggressive, and, for all the reasons I just talked about, I'd stay out of them. So, but let's talk about the trades here. 7 o'clock came right in this little correction right here, and you just don't really get a good signal bar. You get a lower high here, or I'm sorry, a higher low here because we're working up, and but it's right into a double top, not a very good signal bar. But then you get a failed second entry short again, and it's also a little breakout pullback long, fairly decent bar. It is off the midline of this two-tier channel. It's right into the high of the day, so it's a little aggressive, but you may take that trade. I definitely wouldn't take this one. It still would have worked, but when this one didn't take off, I'd be leery of it coming back again like that. Although you could almost look at this as a double bottom with 3 matching lows and a first entry, second entry. So it's not much different than this trade, except there's not as much overlap and congestion like there is right there. So you probably could argue for it, but again, I'd just sit tight really and wait on a second entry, which comes over here. And this one didn't break lower, but when it starts climbing up that trend line and confirming it off those first 2 swings, you really got to confirm there. If you'd had a good signal bar, that would have been the place to go long. But what I would have done here is let it break higher here and see if it'd come back and maybe let me get back in at that same spot, 1 tick above those 3 matching highs there. But you really could have just used a buy stop right there, 1 tick above, and let it go. So either way you wanted to do it, it's the second entry. It's off the key entry point. It's 2 legs back to the EMA, the trend line. You've had to sit patiently here, and there's a lot of support across there too. I don't have my line right across there, but you can see all that support, and that's another reason to like that trade right there. So I wouldn't have a problem with that one right there. And quick easy scalp, but then we get the 2-legged correction. Now you get a second entry long. That's the first break of this channel, so you're probably going to try to get a retest, and that's what you're thinking at this point. This is played out. You got a break, move to a new low. I like going long right there. Doesn't take off. It does come back again, but not a very good signal bar. You get a higher low here, and this did break lower and turn and go out the other side. That's a possibility, but I was a little afraid we might get a measured leg like this for 2 legs back, and we didn't quite have that yet. As you can see, there's leg 1, and you're thinking, hey, we may get 2 legs back. So we got a lot of room to go there, so that could be a little trap, but it's still a higher low, and it's one you might consider. I'm not going to mark it. Failed second entry short here, but now you're going long right back into this double top, these 2 bar matching highs here, and it would have worked too, but I think you're better off just to wait. And then we work back. There's a second entry long right here, but we're not back to the lows. This is a dangerous place to try to get long or short really in the middle, as I talked about a minute ago. And that's why I really didn't like that one either, because by the time you get short, you're down here and you're back in the middle of this range. But we come down here, we make a low, then we make a higher low, and we finally get a strong signal bar. And now you should have drawn this line right here off these lows, and you can see it. But the main thing is you get a double test here. Even if you didn't have the channel, the channel's really You could have really put this in place now with it when it bounced here. Um, but even if you didn't have it, you didn't need it, because now you got to test one. You made this low, you tested it. Really, you made it again here, and then you test it once, twice. Nice bullish bar. I like going long there. And you actually get a failed second entry short right here. There's a new low, first entry, second entry, and you still got plenty of room to get out before those highs. And so I like that one. And if this trend line is correct, you got a long way to go, and this is your key entry point. So you're trying to get in here. So you're looking for a good place to enter, and that turns out to be a good one. There's a little breakout pullback long right there. It's just a first entry though, so I'd say wait on a second entry, see if it comes back to trend line. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and it just keeps going here. There's another little shorter term trend line in here, but I just think it's too risky to be entering out here. Even though this is looking like we're probably going to get another leg up, as I showed you earlier. This is a failed second entry short. Notice that low is lower than that little pullback right there. So first entry, second entry. So that one's a possibility, but that's just your first two swings for that short term. But you can see it working up that trend line all the way until you get a break and it tries to go higher and then turns down. You definitely don't want to enter in here. Even though we got to come back to the EMA, there's a lower high right here, too bullish. You finally get a failed second entry long, and there is enough room to come, if we're coming back to this trend line, to get out, and it is really still in play with this little short-term trend line. So you may take that one. Again, this has been a strong trend, but if this channel is not correct, we could have a failed breakout here, and we may be heading lower. And a lot of times you'll come back to test that breakout point regardless. But if it's a strong trend, we're probably not going to go very much further to the downside. We're probably going to continue on. And then I also would have measured, this is a fairly big correction, so that's probably going to be the middle of a move. I would measure this leg, and I'd also measure to there. And you get about the same place. You actually don't quite get, your original one was right up here on the first big larger leg. So, but that would give you another short-term target and give you a little more leeway to say, hey, we may be going higher. But we do get the close outside here. We move to a new low. We come back to this trend line. This is a nice reversal, nice bullish bar, a good bit away from the EMA, right off this key entry point. I'm going to take that one. There's a failed second entry short right here too. Actually, there's a failed second entry short right there, but with this being off a key entry point, you could almost look at that as one move and then a correction and another, but there are a couple of swings in there. So it's just not a very good setup. Definitely not a good signal bar. So it may, and we could be getting a break here. We could come on back. This may not play out like you're thinking, but this pretty much confirms it. So, and this does make a double top right here. So that one is real tempting, but I just don't think you would want to take it or should take it. After the fact, it looks great, but I don't think I would take it. Notice what happens here though. We make a little double bottom here, and we run up first entry short, and then we move up, and there's a second entry short. It breaks lower, turns and goes up, and closes right there. If it breaks above there, we're probably going to make a new high at the very least, just based off of this shorter term channel working up here. And so I like that one. This is back to the EMA close enough as well. So I like that one, and you do have enough room to get out. You are having to go long right here, a little bit away from the EMA, but we just tested it in what's been a really strong market, and we've been getting away from it. So I like that one. I think that's much safer than actually going long right there. And this thing takes off again. And I just don't really see anything up in here that would make me want to enter. I mean, this is starting to look like a really strong trend. Look at all the little small bar stems on each side, lots of dojis. When you see that, any correction is, notice how the corrections are not very steep. People are realizing now this is a strong trend and we're probably going to keep going up. So any pullback or correction is almost a good chance to get in. So this, if you're thinking like that, I like this trade right here because that comes back and confirms this little, what this is a spike and a channel. And we actually come back to it again right here. And that's a fairly good signal bar. So when it broke above it, actually that is not the signal bar this is, and that's more of an inside bar. But on one of these strong trend days, it's still a correction. So when it broke above that bar right there, you still might consider entering because it's right at the key entry point again. Off it goes. Here's another opportunity right here. But now you're starting to get up here. You're further away from the EMA. This has been going a long ways. If you measure that first leg, probably somewhere like right in here. I'd probably be more like that one. So you're starting to get close. And the problem that you can't, when you're starting to see that you're starting to go into a triangle right there, one of these is going to give in a minute. So you got to be real careful up here. And that's what causes the triangle. Is there's, you've got a midline on the big pattern and you got a trend line on the smaller pattern, and it's creating, it's driving prices into a little tight area that's going to have to, one of them's going to break. So, and you see what happens, the bigger pattern takes over here and dominates the smaller pattern and it sells off. But another thing too is you're going sideways here by this time and you're getting a lot of overlap and stems on both sides. You're starting to get some resistance there. So I wouldn't enter any of these up here. That one right there maybe, but still you've got a lot of overlap right across there by that time. But that's a possibility right there, and it would have worked. But again, I just don't think you're very smart entering up here. And then it sells off. That one's tempting to go short, but figuring we might come back to here. But I think you're better off just to wait. And if it gives you a bounce right there, I'd take that long because now you got a little double bottom. Relatively small bullish bar right off the very strong key entry point. And look at it go. And if you go back and look, where did every one of your big moves generate at? This key entry point. And that's where it always happens, especially when you get one that's a bigger pattern like this. Usually what happens when you get a bigger dominant two-tiered channel like this, prices won't come back to it very often. And so you just don't get a lot of chance to trade it. But today, prices came back to it a few times and gave you some opportunities to enter it. So, and look what happened. Each time it came back to it, boom, boom. And we couldn't even get back to it here. We actually get back to it one more time here. Unfortunately, there's a new high, first entry, second entry. So that's like a third entry long there. There is a higher low right here, but prices don't break above it. You get another little inside bar, and so now it's looking a little congestive, and it's just not probably worth it. There is a double test here and a fairly bullish inside bar, so it looks it looks like a little repeat pattern all over of this, and being right at the 2 o'clock, and it is a second entry, so you might take that one right there at the 2 o'clock hour. But because you're definitely, after a break of this, you're going to get a retest of the highs on a trend that strong. And actually, we get a big move up, and we still moved up into the till the new trading day, which is, we're into that now because I'm doing this a little late today. So, yep. And you only got to catch one, or once you start trending, if you catch one of these and get a runner, it only takes a trade or two, and you can make some pretty good money. It took a little while to get going, but at the end, after the fact, it's real obvious what was going on here. But early on in the day, right in here, it was not that obvious what was going on there. It looks like you got a two-tiered channel up, and we're kind of going sideways. We did trade up into this, so you'd expect you might get a failed break lower and move higher, which is what happened. But overall, it turned out to be a really strong day. I mean, this is a huge move from the overnight lows of, just call it 27.46, all the way to 28.05. I mean, that's 50, 60 point move there we got. So really nice move. I mean, you want to take advantage of those. So if you can catch a runner on one of these and it's still playing this trend line out into the 2 o'clock hour, you probably want to stay with it. And I wouldn't have a problem staying with this, with a runner after 2 o'clock if you really want it, if this thing's still taking off and you've got a good runner. You'll have to exit somewhere or they'll kick you out. So, okay, I had a little interruption, but I think we'd finished all the trades. We were just kind of talking about the big picture, but definitely a uptrend all day. Again, I've talked about this a lot, but for anybody that's new in here, when you see these kind of trends where it's just up, 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 and there's lots of stems and on both sides, and the corrections are very shallow. I mean, from here to here, the biggest correction is probably one of these two, maybe a couple of points. When you see that, those are strong trends. So when it comes back to this key entry point, you want to try to get in it. And you see where every big move took off from. Notice we just went from here to here, it was sideways. But once we got to this trend line, boom, it takes off. Comes off the midline, back to that trend line, and boom, it takes off again. And notice how strong it is this time. People are realizing now, hey, this is a strong trend day. And then it comes back, it comes off that midline, so we're probably headed back again to the trend line. Once it hits there, boom, it takes off. Look how quick that one went from the trend line to the midline. People are on board now. They know, hey, next time it comes back that trend line, I'm getting on, and everybody, boom. Here it can't even get back to the trend line. People are trying to get in early. And then finally it comes back. You get a little bit of a correction, close outside, but then once the buying starts, boom, it takes off again. And so that key entry point, that trend line, that is the key to all of it. But make sure you remember when you see these trends with the little bars and very shallow corrections where there's lots of stems and they look like, a lot of them look like dojis. They don't look it, but they're very strong trends and you have to take advantage of them. So great trading day. All you have to do is catch one or two of these trades because you got a runner on most of them at the key entry point. So really good trading day. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.